Since we're starting to get leaks and reveals for the new set of VPremium, I decided let's have some fun today and discuss some cards that I would like to see back in the V era. What's up you guys, and welcome to the Prime Vanguard channel. Today I'm going to be discussing 5 cards that I want to see back in VPremium. Now for some of my Vanguard veterans, you guys will recognize these cards as they're in the very beginning and old days of Vanguard, but I've been playing Vanguard since basically the beginning. I joined the game when Limit Break was just starting to happen, and I got to see all the new clans come out. I got to see new play styles. I was there for G, Limit Break, Legion. I was there for pretty much the whole 360 in all the growing days of Vanguard. Since we're entering into Overdress and we now have the encounter cards, which essentially are old units brought back into the lore of the Overdress era, I figured why not have some fun today and just look at some cards that I personally want to see get a re-edition so that they can be joined into the VPremium era of Vanguard. I'm doing the VPremium era of Vanguard simply because I feel like with Overdress, even though we have the encounter cards already out like Dragonic Overlord and Phantom Blaster Dragon, yes, I think that it's going to be more realistic to see these cards in VPremium because the encounter cards feel more of like a top seat. Like these are the promotional cards of Vanguard that you want to see, like the Phantom Blaster Dragon, Dragonic Overlord, probably maybe a Blaster Blade lineup in the future, or an Alfred lineup for the Keter Sanctuary. And then for Dark States, or maybe for even, what was the other nation? It was Brant Gate. We probably might get something for that later in the future for an encounter setup, but I really feel like all these old cards that I'm going to discuss to you guys are just going to be more seen in VPremium than Overdress era. Now for a lot of my new Vanguard players, the ones that have just gotten into Overdress and recently playing, a lot of these cards are going to be pretty foreign to you, but I'm going to go ahead and tell the little story behind all these cards as they are. All of these cards are ones that I personally played or played decks with, and they mean a lot to me. Alright, so without further ado, let's go ahead and get started into this video talking about cards that I want back for the VPremium era. Now my very first card and main card important to me that I want back in this era is Blazing Flare Dragon. Now for those of you guys that do not know, didn't watch my 10th anniversary Vanguard video, Blazing Flare Dragon and Kagero was my very first clan into the game when I started playing. Blazing Flare Dragon was my main deck, and I rode that deck out all the way. I pretty much collected every single Kagero common and rare card that I could get and just created like the jankiest Blazing Flare Dragon deck that I could, until finally one day I created a unique Blazing Flare Dragon that actually won me a locals and old Chicago store that I used to play at. Now this was back before Legion and the Break Ride era, so obviously I stopped playing the deck after that certain amount of time and point, but it was just this really fun and unique deck that I had that a lot of people didn't see coming because Blazing Flare Dragon at that time was he just wasn't as good as the new Kagero stuff that we had compared to that time, but because of the unique way that I set the deck up and the playstyle that I built for it, I went ahead and decided to actually keep going on with that deck and making it as best as I can. So Blazing Flare Dragon is one card that I definitely want to see back in the VPremium era of Vanguard, and it's a deck that I was sadly really unfortunate not to see in our latest era of the V sets coming out. They're going more towards like the revival of the old Legion decks, but I'm very happy with what Kagero is potentially going to get and see in the future and so forth. So for my second card that I want back in the VPremium era is actually Mr. Invincible. Now for my OG players, you guys know who Mr. Invincible is. For my newer players, there used to be this old mechanic back in Vanguard called Mega Blasting, which essentially was you got to Soul Charge 8 and Counter Blast 5, and you got what was considered a really powerful skill at the time. Now obviously Soul Blast 8, Counter Blast 5 is a really big deal in this era of Vanguard, and most players would never let you get to that point because that's a ridiculous amount of resource, and a lot of decks, even if they wanted to, could get to that Soul Charge 8 with ease. But back then, once you set up that Mr. Invincible play and you got that off, you just felt so happy because you essentially got a whole new battle phase. I really want to see what they're going to do with Mr. Invincible, and I think that some key cards that they're going to bring back with Mr. Invincible are going to be ones that are obviously going to support his specific play style, as I think it'd be really cool to see how Mr. Invincible is going to be able to restand and generate multiple attacks like he did in before. And maybe they might even do something completely unique and totally like uncanny with him, considering the fact that Mr. Invincible was always a very uncanny card. He was actually old card that you were able to make a deck up with back in the time when we were able to mix clans in Vanguard. I know, this is like, you guys don't understand. I've been playing Vanguard since like practically the beginning. So I'm used to seeing like mixed clan decks and stuff like that. I know they were all used to like picking one nation or one clan and only playing with those. But before you were able to do that, before obviously they stuck to just nation-based or clan-based tournaments. But Mr. Invincible, I definitely await your return. For the third card that I want to see enter the VPremium era of Vanguard is actually a Dark Irregulars card called Steel Vampire. Now, Steel Vampire is actually one of the most unique cards on my list because Steel Vampire, to my knowledge, won a tournament around 2 years ago in the era of G, where you got to use Steel Vampire's ability to swap the grade out of your opponent's Vanguard and go ahead and place it 0 and then get a rush off with its crazy ability and the insane G support we had back then. Steel Vampire had one of the most unique and game-changing abilities. Having the ability to swap a card out and change essentially the grade of your opponent is such a huge deal. Now, I'm very curious to see how they would bring it back and incorporate this swapping of the grade out into today's play, as even in the premium era, even though I don't play premium, I know that swapping out the grade from 3 to 0 is a really big deal. Not only is it a huge power drop, but by doing that, you also lose out on some of the best defensive units that you're going to have in the game. Seeing how they would incorporate this into VPremium would be really amazing and something really unique for all Dark Irregular decks to have. For my fourth card for the revival of V, I actually want to see a card called Turquoise Beast Tamer. Now, Turquoise Beast Tamer was a simple Pale Moon rearguard unit who got the ability to gain 3,000 power whenever she Superior Calls from the Soul. This card is more of just like a fan favorite card, and I guess you can call her my waifu or whatever, but she was just a really cool looking card at the time, and I think it'd be really unique and nice if she got her own spotlight in Pale Moon, where she became her own main grade 3, and you got to incorporate different playstyles with this card and seeing what it can do. Now in V, we did get a lot of new grade 3s and obviously different cards that came back so that you can play these unique styles of each clan for their respective decks. But Turquoise Beast Tamer just being an old card that was essentially the staple of the icon of Pale Moon, it'd be really cool to have her back and see what that deck can do. Now, number 5 on this list is actually a really popular grade 3 that was even featured in the anime, but that card is Skydiver. Now, Skydiver was one of my main grade 3s back when I first started playing the Spike Brothers clan, and he was a really gimmicky grade 3, as if you were playing the General Siegfried and Skydiver build way back then, you essentially got a free Superior Call and the threat an additional attack. However, I think that with Skydiver being an OG staple of the Spike Brothers deck, it'd be really interesting to see him get his own spotlight as a main grade 3 and a Spike Brothers deck of his own. He had a really cool gimmick, he had a unique attack, he worked with a lot of cards, and essentially filtered out and made a staple play in the sort of changing out units for the Spike Brothers rush of attacks. I really want to see Skydiver get the chance to get a spotlight again. He didn't get any new upgrades or support in the future, even in all the supports of Spike Brothers that we had, and eventually once Siegfried stopped being one of the main cards of Spike Brothers and we entered into the Deadly Lucifer era of Limit Break, Skydiver made a small comeback as you essentially got to call him out again with the Dudley support that you had and get that threat and additional attack. But this time it was already in your hand on top of the Twin Drive that you got from Deadly Lucifer, so you had the chance to see potentially a lot of new and good cards. I really want to see if they can do that with Skydiver, but this is all just wishful thinking. Well, that's it for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoy videos like these, please go ahead and give me that thumbs up button. It really does help this channel out. Do not forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you guys get notified on all my daily uploads and posts. I have a part 2 video of this nostalgic trip going on for me, so go ahead and stay tuned for that. But as for this video, guys, that's it for me. Peace.